Well, hi, hello guys. Today I'm going to talk about Uhtred, The Last Kingdom, especially the fifth season. The excellent adaptation of Bernard Cornwell's The Saxon Stories comes to an end, as a TV series at least, in a thrilling style. The Last Kingdom has been a bloody joy to watch since 2015 and has always been nothing short of brilliant. Like the seasons before it, The Last Kingdom, Season 5 perfectly blends the history of the birth of England with thrilling entertainment and memorable characters. The Last Kingdom, Season 5, finds Uhtred, son of Uhtred, worrying about his old friend Brida, traveling from Iceland to York. Brida brings along an army of warriors and her daughter, Aesir, to disrupt Uhtred's life in Runcorn as he attempts to care for young Athelstan. Brida's attack disrupts the relative peace in the land and threatens to tear up the idea of a united kingdom that Alfred dreamed of before his death. Through it all, the devious Lord Athelstan is scheming to seize the power of the throne from King Edward for his grandson, and his actions set in motion a battle for the very heart of England, one that Uhtred has to once again play a big part in. As shows like Game of Thrones have shown us, it is often difficult to stick the landing for a successful series. Thankfully, The Last Kingdom Season 5 is able to close the story off by linking back to the various threads that have appeared throughout the show since The Last Kingdom Season 1. The series is at its best when it twists the political intrigue together with personal tales of a man who is trying to find himself and care for those he loves. There is a clear bond between Uhtred and the various people who he has fought with and defended over the years. This makes it even more gut-wrenching when Uhtred suffers a loss, as we can truly feel the pain that he is in after losing a loved one. It also helps that Uhtred is a character whose journey makes sense. He started as a brash, often arrogant but skilled warrior and has developed into a more cautious, truthful man who thinks about the effects that his actions may have on those around him. At one time, he yearned for nothing more than to take back his home of Bebenberg. But in The Last Kingdom Season 5, he cares more about the people he is with than where he is and needs to be conceived by others about the importance of his destiny. The bloody battles are still brilliant, thrilling to watch, and the writing excellently balances the large cast of characters throughout the thin episodes of The Last Kingdom Season 5. One complaint would be that at this point in the series, the age of the characters becomes quite muddled. Uhtred has lived throughout the rise of Alfred's son and grandson, but doesn't appear to be much older than King Edward himself. Elswith has a few scenes with her on-screen daughter and granddaughter, and all the actresses are in their 20s. And this does create a bit of disconnect for the audience, but not enough to run any particular episode, thankfully. However, it would have been an injustice to react any of the actors in the to recast any of the actors in the series, as they are all played to perfection. Yes, they did. From the charismatic lead of Uhtred to my favorite returning Dane Hasted, every performance is played to perfection. How much longer can the heroic Uhtred keep riding to the rescue. 2 years ago, the fourth season of The Last Kingdom, Netflix found the Saxon saga not quite hitting peak from possibly reeling from the fallout of the haunting death of King Alfred. Happily, any doubts are blown away with the arrival of Five, in which the show's trademarks of naughty dynastic rivalry, English romantic entanglement, and horrifying eruptions of bloodsureness are all rolling ahead at full blast. Sadly, they say the series will be the last, though a feature film may be in the work. Some things have changed. We are now without Ian Hart's stalwart Beocca, who died a heroic death last time around, but the sturdy underpinnings of Bernard Cornwell's original novels remain. The 10th century Anglo-Saxon world, mostly replicated in Hungary, is depicted as a strange and numerous place, rife with symbols, superstitions, and dark magic. Eric Celtic inflected music enhances the mood of weirdness, echoing back to the dawn of time pictured Timothy. The land looks newborn and not yet fully formed, while the struggle between the Norse gods of the Danes and the Christianity of the Saxons is a fault line always on the point of riding open, with catastrophic potential, as we see when the treacherous Saxon alderman Ethelstan, always seeking new ways to advance his own family's political interests, devises a black-hearted scheme to provoke a religio-racial war in this dump. Foggy Britain, he gets a degree of components when he finds that his own daughter has become collateral damage. But his monstrous scheming doesn't end here. One of the main plot drivers is the eternal rivalry between heroic but star-crossed warrior Uhtred, Alexander Draymond, looking a little sadder and wiser, and Brida, which has been knitted into the saga since its very beginning, both born as Saxons but captured as childhood slaves by the Danes. It's startling to recall that distant time when Matthew Macfadyen played Uhtred's father and ruler of Bebbanburg. They have been through a long and torturous arc, from inseparable friends and lovers to implacable enemies. This time around, an increasingly psychotic Brida emerges with her entourage of face-painted vigilants from the volcanic wastes of Iceland, and sets about slaughtering the populace of York. This is because the city is ruled by Sigtryggr and his wife Stiora, who happens to be Uhtred's daughter. Brida's objective is to erase Uhtred's bloodline in its entirety, along with anybody else who gets in her way. It's the dramatic oppositions which fool the Last Kingdom's formidable grip, risk versus reward, or the heady allure of power balance against what has to be sacrificed to attain it. The Mercian succession looms large in its fifth season, which forces Uhtred to assess how his life might have been changed if his love for her American queen, Athelfield, had been allowed to run its course, and her dynastic duty hadn't forced them apart. The necessity to mark sacrifices for the greater good is explored through her brother King Edward's decisions to overrule Athelfield's choice of successor with a cold-blooded display of force majeure. The setting antique and the characters have names it's impossible to spell. They may do ridiculous things like Uhtred's exasperately lame decisions to let Brida walk away free from the blood path in New York, because it was too early in the series to allow her to be killed. That's it. But The Last Kingdom works because it's rooted in unfashionable but indestructible principles of life and death, love and duty, honesty and lies. Time to watch all 5 series from the beginning, perhaps. The Last Kingdom Season 5 is another stunning piece of television. If you like shows with battles full of grit and blood, with interesting characters that make up a grand historical epic, then The Last Kingdom is as good as it gets. All that is left to finish of the story is a final film titled Seven Kings Must Die. If the high standards of the TV series are met, then we are all in for a thrilling final. Destiny is all. See you next week, next video. Please watch it. Give me your review and what you think about it. Yeah, see you. Destiny is all. Well, hi guys, hello. Hope you're doing fine. Today we're going to talk about the handsome devil, Lucifer, a Netflix series. Lucifer Morningstar, the devil himself, has tired of hell and takes a vacation in Los Angeles. His vacation has already lasted 5 years when the show begins. This is a rare show that embraces religion and the struggles of fate. One part melodrama about a charming, oversexed, devilishly handsome playboy, and one part exploration of the dichotomy between fate and reason told through the lens of a family drama and a love story. The police procedural piece is weak, even sloppy. For example, in an early episode, Detective Chloe Decker cross-contaminates evidence by examining roughly a dozen pieces of evidence at the episode's murder scene. Decker, the show's female lead, then scrolls through the victim's cell phone instead of turning it over to the Cybele unit, all while wearing, guess what, the same gloves. Yes. Lucifer worked with Detective Decker as a civilian consultant isn't enough to raise the quality of the police procedural aspect of the show. Even the oversexed handsome playboy component becomes tiresome after a while. Admittedly, I quickly rebound from that. What keeps me going back for more is the layered exploration of fate and reason within the context of dysfunctional family dynamics. After thousands of years spent punishing souls, Lucifer left hell and reinvented himself as an LA nightclub owner. He will tell anyone who will listen that he is not the devil. Rather, he punishes evil. It is an existence that Lucifer didn't seek and frankly loathes. He loathes himself for his hellish work, God for casting him out of heaven to do it, and what humans think of him because of it. The early seasons are rooted in a type of theology of omniscience, with God as an all-knowing, all-controlling, distant creator makes all of the decisions, leaving everyone else to guess as to God's will. Lucifer believes that he was banished to hell because God was punishing him. He doesn't know and aches to understand the reasons for his punishment. The show illuminates early on that God cast Lucifer out of heaven because he was the only angel strong enough and capable enough to take on the thankless task of punishing the souls condemned to hell. But Lucifer can't or won't see that. His myopic viewpoint only allows him to see that he was the one cast out of the Silver City, while his angelic siblings were allowed to stay. This is the foundation of the tension Lucifer has with his brother Emenandel, God's most deceitful angelic son. Amenangel's, his name is hard to pronounce. Presence is in Los Angeles is a persistent reminder to Lucifer of the difference in their positions. This, coupled with Emenandel constantly coercing Lucifer to return to his post, gives way to an existential crisis that leads the devil to therapy. In this therapy scenes, really this is where the show really blossoms. Lucifer explores his feelings toward his father, his brother Decker, and in season 2, his mother. In the first season, we see Lucifer struggle as a son who only wants his father's approval. His desire for simple communication and not receiving it creates massive insecurity. Drinking and sex are the key coping mechanisms to use to compensate. Lucifer's fractured relationship with God leaves him despondent. It's a feeling to which many people can relate. However, unlike humans, Lucifer doesn't just believe God exists, he knows it. Consequently, the one-sided relationship pains him in a way that doesn't resonate with humans, who similarly seek communication with God. This element of the show deepens in season 2 with the introduction of Ella, a forensic scientist at the police department. She's a woman of deep faith, one who understands that even her moments of doubt are crucial to her. Catholicism, because of faith, she believes that which she does not know, yet she struggles in her belief far less than Lucifer and Menandel, who believes precisely because they know. All three desire, even yearn to tangibly experience the presence in their lives. It reacts differently when it doesn't happen. Ella continues in her belief that is strengthened by doubt. Emenandel, even the dutiful son, persists in his effort to do God's will, while struggling to admit to himself that he is not sure that is, and Lucifer finds new ways to engage in the same violent rebellion. One reason my weariness of the charming playboy stick doesn't last is because just when I began to find it tiresome, there is a pivot that regains my attention. For instance, sex is the currently Lucifer initially uses to pay for his therapy session with Dr. Linda Martin. This clear gross lapse of ethical judgment on her part is mitigated by the fact that Lucifer uses his powers to manipulate her and spark a desire for him. However, she is not so befuddled that she can't see what is obvious to everyone, except the devil himself. Lucifer is in love. Late in season 1, Linda sees Lucifer and Chloe interacting and gains insight into him that she could not have seen in therapy alone. She immediately halts their sexual relationship in favor of an exclusively therapeutic one. It's an act of self-respect and self-preservation. It's one thing to regularly have sex with a man knowing that both of you are in it for a bit of fun. It's quite another to regularly have sex with a man knowing he's in love with another woman. Being in love requires vulnerability, usually that manifests emotionally in letting someone see a side of us that we typically protect, even conceal. Embracing that vulnerability comes with great risk. For Lucifer, the emotional risk has physical consequences. As an angel, Lucifer is immortal, yet when he is in close physical proximity to Chloe, he is susceptible to the dangers of the mortal world. Thus, he is constantly faced with the choice of continuing to protect himself or be around the one person who makes him want to be better. By season 5, the show has transitioned to more of theology of self-actualization, where with help from Martin Decker and Emanuel, Lucifer realizes the control he has over his own life. It is abundantly clear by this point that Lucifer and Detective Decker know they are in love with each other. Even with this confidence, he can't bring himself to be vulnerable enough to say the words. That metaphor deserves an essay for its own. At its core, Lucifer is a show that manages to do something rare whilst reaching a familiar path. It's a show about a wayward son desperate to understand and be understood by his father, and it's about a man who can't admit to himself that he is in love because doing so requires a level of emotional and physical vulnerability that he is not equipped to embrace. All of that happens against a rarely seen backdrop of religion and faith. According to Pew Research Center, 98% of Americans believe in God to some degree. Yet, religious belief is something we secretly see depicted in popular media. This show tells us that issues of faith and religion can be portrayed without being preachy, and in fact can be insightful and playful with a bit of debaucherous fun. Lucifer is never afraid to express his desires. He embraces his dark side and shows it to the world, which is why he is so attractive and charismatic. We all want to be less inhibited like Lucifer, to not be held back by the rules enforced upon us. How often do we ourselves want to exact vengeance on those that have wronged us? How often do we want to satisfy our forbidden bodily desires? How often do we wish that we can just let loose and unleash chaos and do whatever we want? The more rules that are in place, the more we want to break them. We always want to push the boundaries, to test our limits, to see how much the universe is willing to tolerate. We all have dark, unsatisfied urges and desires. We all have a dark side. The anti-hero allows us to fulfill those dark desires vicariously. Why do you think it's so hard to not hold a grudge? Why do you think it's so hard to stay a virgin, for example? So, guys, that was pretty much everything today about Lucifer. I hope you see it, you give it a chance, and tell me about what you find, and let's determine with this sentence what is your desire. It's favorite sentence. Bye. See you next video. Well, hi guys. Hello. How are you? I'm going to talk about this brilliant television series that could probably be best described as the Flintstones gone stark raving mad. The Simpsons. Everyone knows them. Some love the series and some could care less about it. Love it or hate it, it is near impossible to criticize the intelligence and creativity of this series. The titled animated family makes their home in Springfield, USA, and gets into situations that are seemingly more outlandish and crazier than the previous adventure. Homer, Marge, Bart, Lisa, and Maggie are still going strong after nearly a dozen years of television life, and with each passing moment, it seems that the series sets some new precedent. For several years, the show seemed to be only attraction to the teen, obscure Fox network. It was the first primetime animated show that was created and treated like a sitcom since the Flintstones quietly left the air in 1966. Many people feared the series when it first premiered in 1989 because they felt that it was hardcore adult material in a candid form that would appeal to younger audiences. Well, for the most part, this was true. However, The Simpsons would prove to be much more for all audiences. The great thing about the series is that it caters to all audiences. True, there are all usually situations that may not be suitable for all viewers, but then again, that is true with everything on television. This side of Disneyland and Sesame Street. The Simpsons works because of great comedy, of course, but also great lessons that can be taken from most of the episodes. The people within the program may be animated, but they are just as complicated and vulnerable as the people watching them. All the regulars have their quirks, but in some episodes you can understand what certain characters are going through because the show is so lifelike at times. Former President George Bush, the one from 1988 till 1992, once made a statement that families should be more like the Waltons and less like the Simpsons. His opinion is somehow old-fashioned and unrealistic. In other words, many topics dealt with the Simpsons fit life for people in the 1990s and 20s better than the Waltons did in the 1970s. A crowning achievement in television art. 5 stars out of 5. Set in Springfield, the average American town, the show focuses on the antiques and everyday adventures of the Simpsons family, as well as a virtual cast of thousands. Since the beginning, the series has been a pop culture icon, attracting hundreds of celebrities to guest star. The show has also made name for itself in its fearless, satirical take on politics, media, and American life in general. The Simpsons have been on our televisions for 20 years. It's the longest scripted show in TV history, and it's made a whole lot of people really rich. So why has The Simpsons been so successful? There's a number of reasons, but ultimately it comes down to the writing. Simpsons started at a time when people weren't expecting a ton from sitcoms. Simpsons was new in a lot of ways. It was animated, But also, what really started to happen was the cleverness and the thoughtfulness of the humor absolutely started permanently TV and permitting the culture. Now, do you have any ballpark estimate of how much the series has been worth? Wait for it. Billions with a B. Yes, billions with a B. But no one really knows, no matter what the show is worth now. When the show ends, that's when they will make the real money. Because that's when networks all over the world will pay more money to have syndicated episodes. Now, you just mentioned all over the world. What is the international market for The Simpsons? It's not as big as you think. The Simpsons plays in many, many countries. But the main market for The Simpsons is here in America. The most interesting thing about the international market, the changes they have to make to the show so the humor translates. In the Arab world, Homer can't have beer, so he drinks soda. Wait, soda is a soda pop? It's a soda pop. And then a foreign exchange student at Springfield Elementary is named Ute, who's German. But in Germany, it wouldn't make sense if he's German, so he would have to be Swiss German. Before I let you go, do you have a favorite episode? Oh my god, it's so hard to choose. It's like picking one of your favorite adopted children. I don't know. I love the episode, the memorial episode, which Conan O'Brien wrote the first draft of when a monorail comes to Springfield. What is so great about The Simpsons? The Simpsons has been a great show. It has stood to the test of time with ratings still floating in for the new seasons. However, your question is what made Deception such a great show? The fact that nothing like it had been done before. Yes, the Flintstones and the Jetsons has been around for a long time before The Simpsons came along, as had many other similar shows, to be honest. While this is true, those shows and the others with similar dynamics never showed a family with such dysfunction. Homer, an abusive alcoholic, loudmouth, who has no idea how to tell 10 minutes into the future. However, on Homer's other side is a caring, working-class father to 3 kids. Marge, a loving and slightly overprotective mother, essentially the glue that held the family together. Bart, the troublemaking, obnoxious kid with what seems like no normal compass whatsoever. Then you see episodes where he too would do anything for his family. Lisa, the dorky, know-it-all title girl with no friends, one of, if not my favorite character from the entire show. Finally, Maggie, the homicidal, remorseless baby who shot a man because he tried to take her lollipop. It is this family dynamic that sets The Simpsons apart from every other show on TV, in my opinion. The incredible amount of different stories that the creators have been able to tell, from Lisa having a crush on her substitute teacher to Mr. Burns capturing the Loch Ness monster. The fact that the show has gone on so long, longer than any other animated TV series, to my knowledge. Finally, I could go on, but I want to keep this from becoming way too long. The abundant amount of theories that the fans have come up with. Homer in a coma, the B-Sharps royalties, and so many more. It's get the audience at home thinking and interacting with the show. To sum up, The Simpsons has been one of, if not the greatest TV shows of this generation. I hope I still have a few more good years. Thank you guys, that was pretty much everything. Hope you like it. And don't forget to subscribe and like. See you next video. Bye. Well, hi guys and hello. This talk about working moms and if it's working for me. Now that it's on Netflix, this CBC show by Catherine Reitman is being binge watched on both sides of the border. But I'm surprised that so many of my smart, strong working mom friends love it. People seem to really love Working Mom. The 22 minutes sitcom, helmed by comedian Catherine Reitman, premiered on CBC in 2017 and has been recommended to me, a working mom of 3 kids, almost weekly ever since. Now that the series is on Netflix in both Canada and the US, it's become a binge-worthy show that everyone's talking about on both sides of the border. I keep hearing that it breaks barriers for women in comedy and really speaks to the modern mom. But I've gotta be honest, now that I've watched it, I'm surprised that so many of my smart and strong mom friends love it and that they actually buy into the show's low-key, inspirational messaging and gross out humor. Reitman plays Kate, a mom and ad executive who's unable to find the elusive work-life balance so many of us struggle to achieve. But in Kate's case, she's married, wealthy, white woman. Her privilege oozes from the screen, even throughout the salacious and, let's be honest, affair she learns about between her husband Nathan and her mommy friend, Anne's nanny. In fact, nearly every character on the show either employs a nanny or is a stay-at-home mom, something many Canadian parents simply can't afford to do. If this show is about real-world parenting problems, where are the long, snaking lines of parents standing outside daycares overnight, trying to get their kids a coveted, overpriced spot? Where are the women forced to put their careers on hold for several years because daycare costs outweigh their salaries? Where are the women stringing together several part-time jobs and working nights or weekends, leaning on family and neighbors to take the kids so they can make enough to pay rent? Where are the women facing actual real-world challenges and not wealthy women problems? In the very first episode of the show, they actually do try to tackle a real problem, women's mental health, but they turn it into a very unfunny joke. Frankie, played by Jono Rinaldi, announces to her mom group that she has a wee bit of postpartum. And from there, the laughs roll in, all at the expense of this character's suicide attempts and her difficulty finding antidepressants that work for her mood disorder. Instead of punching up, the writers are punching down, belittling those suffering from mental illness and using hurtful stereotypes that show a lack of basic respect for women who've been fighting to get society to see postpartum depression, and postpartum psychosis as legitimate issues. Up to 13% of Canadian women have little or no support available during pregnancy and the postpartum months, according to the Canadian Maternity experiences survey published by the Public Health Agency of Canada, around 8% of Canadian women report depressive symptoms, and some doctors think the actual number are higher because women often don't report out of shame or fear, mocking Frankie's very real mental health issues is really disappointing. Then there is the episode in season 1 when Jenny, played by Jocelyn Wallem, goes back to work after her maternity leave is over and is caught in the break room by one of her colleagues. I found the whole setup to be ridiculous. Honestly, who masturbates in a breakdown room? Workplace sexual harassment is never funny, regardless of who the perps is, man or woman. While the show brushes off Jenny's in-office wonk, they do deal with the Me Too movement in season 2 when Anne's creepy ex, Dr. Brown, comes back into focus. With Kate and Nathan's, spoiler alert, split in season 3, we also see how families with money can easily separate their assets. Although the emotional toll of the separation reads as genuine and relatable, Kate moves into her own apartment at the start of the season like it's NBD, but in real life, many families struggle for years with infidelity, lies, hurt, and abuse because of the financial constraints. Not everyone can actually afford to break up. Managing 2 households or paying child and parental support is out of reach for some people. When Kate waltzes into her new space almost effortlessly, it does a disservice to the challenges many women face when trying to leave abusive or hurtful relationships. Working Moms also mostly ignores the truly diverse makeup of Canadian communities. 3 of 4 main characters are white. Yes, Frankie is married to a black woman, Giselle, played by Olenik Adeli. But she's not a fully developed character. It feels like a very convenient way to tick the lesbian and woman of color boxes. And Anne's aforementioned nanny, a younger woman of color, doesn't even get to have an actual name on the show. She's just mean nanny. Mean nanny. That's it. If this representation, I've got to wonder who is being represented here. I'm just not working for me, to be honest. That's it. That was pretty much everything about this show. See you next video, and please don't forget to subscribe and share, like. See you next video. It's Peaky Blinders, everyone. Peaky Blinders has had quite the bumpy ride over the years. Some would argue that the previous few seasons have moved into more hedonistic, trippy territory, valuing cinematography and visuals over big action set pieces and exciting standoffs. And they're certainly not wrong. In fact, if there was ever a series that typifies this imbalance, it's season 6. Without getting too much into spoilers, those after a resolution that wraps up absolutely everything here will be disappointed, with a movie already confirmed and plenty of loose threads leading into that. The final 81-minute chapter of the season essentially feels like an appetizer before the main course of the aforementioned movie to follow. Season 6 story though picks up with the Shelby family utterly broken following the tragic loss of Helen McCarthy, the actress who plays Polly Shelby. The series goes into a state of mourning as Tommy is taunted by Captain Swing, pointing out that their family has been dealt a horrid blow. Polly is dead. Arthur has gone off the deep end again, and Tommy is broken mess and close to suicide. In fact, the final moments of season 5 saw Tommy step out the mist with a gun to his head. And season 6 begins right here with fascists entering the fray and the twisted, nasty Oswald still on the prowl. Tommy eventually gathers what sources he has left to try and hit back. Unfortunately, that's easier said than done, as the family wrestle with another tragedy in their midst. To complicate matters further, Michael blames Tommy for his mother's death and sets to work gaining his revenge, dead set on taking out Thomas once and for all. This conflict encapsulates most of his season, which is far more trippy and surreal than any of the previous ones. Unfortunately, it also loses a fair amount of focus on the external conflicts to double down on Tommy's inner demons. This is something the show has portrayed since all the way back in season 1, but here it feels a little unfocused, which I guess typifies the overall theme of season 6. I won't go into spoilers, but certain characters are introduced and never handled effectively. Jack Nelson, for example, is added as a big bad but never really gets much of a resolution. Whether the writers are holding out hope for him in the movie is anyone's guess, but it doesn't help the writing here at all. That's to say, nothing of a brand new character introduced with ties to Tommy, which honestly feels like a get out of jail free card for writer's block. While the individual episodes are good to watch, examining this as a collective whole is where the cracks can really be seen. Characters like Arthur fall back into old habits with yet another addiction subplot, while Ada is given some cracking lines of dialogue, and not much else. With the benefits of hindsight, it's easy to see where the shortcomings are this year. Peaky Blinders Season 6 isn't a bad watch, but it isn't easily the weakest of the 6 seasons. I'd imagine a fair few of you are confused over the negative tone here, given the ratings given to the individual episodes, but compared to other TV released this year, Peaky Blinders just doesn't compare. It's a shame for sure, but despite a rather blinded final, the Shelby family failed to rise to the occasion. I love Peaky Blinders. I was so excited for this season and thought it was set up so well in season 5, and then the season was a total disaster. What happened to the fascist bad guy? Such a great villain to go against Tommy Shelby, and he's barely in the season at all. Why? Why on earth would you not just put the bad guy in more scenes? Where was Arthur? Why is he not in any scenes hardly at all? What on earth are you thinking getting rid of the second main character? It makes absolutely no sense. This was a very Tommy heavy season. I love that character, don't get me wrong, but why on earth does he have to be in every scene? This show has such a strong cast and they barely used them at all this season. What an absolute joke. I hope more people become aware of how bad this season is and Stephen Knight is forced to address how awful this really was. Tommy mentioned early on when he's playing all sides that he wants intelligence on the fascists to give to Winston Churchill, and we get none of that. Would have been nice seeing Tommy sheen with the best of them. Even a blowhard and like that that liked to talk such as Winston. Michael spends most of his time in a prison, getting set up early by Tommy, and when he gets out, he just goes and plans to blow Tommy up with a bomb. That's seriously his plan. No plotting, no players, no depth, no secondary or tertiary plan. Just, I know Tommy is the smartest guy in the room, and his schemes have schemes, and those schemes have sub schemes. But yeah, leaving him alone in a car for a suspiciously long amount of time will totally kill this main protagonist. Like Benioff and Weiss before them, who quite successfully massacred Game of Thrones in its final days, Stephen Knight took a steaming dump on this final season in an attempt to get over with it. What a shame, actually. That was pretty much everything. I'm sorry for the tone. I'm sorry for the whatever for the lovers of Peaky Blinders, but that's just my point of view. I hope you enjoy the show, at least the 5 seasons. Anyway, don't forget to to subscribe. Bye. Farewell to Ozark. In this near perfect world of secrets, lies, and cartel bosses, Laura Linney and Jason Bateman have been compelling to the Beard's bitter end. In Ozark, Wendy and Marty Beard are equally deep in blood. Indeed, the current and final season began late last year with the couple in the bedroom of a Mexican drug baron's pretentious estate, washing blood spatter they caught in their faces when the cartel's lawyer, played by Janet McTeer, was terminated for double crossing them, which, as anyone can tell you, is always a mistake. But what makes Ozark compelling right to its bitter end is that the birds rage furiously against their fate in a way that Macbeth does not. Popular culture in general and crime dramas in particular are littered with corrupted blood, spattered souls who look into the abyss and imagine they are exceptions, and that is it will not consume them. Wendy and Marty imagine they have the business savvy and people skills to pull off what he could not. They plan to reverse in their family people career out of Ozark's sea of blood, rinse off the damned spots, return to Chicago, and pass themselves off as an apple pie American family unsealed by crime. Their non-profit Birds Family Foundation, swollen with drug money, will help them in this rebanding, and through it they plan to bankroll good cause as such with bitter irony. Rehab centers for heroin addicts, even though the Birds Marty, played by Jason Bateman, as a man all but emotionally lobotomized. Wendy, played by Laura Linney, as a woman unremittingly self-eluded and no less ruthless, are among the most evil couples since Burnham Wood moved to Dancing Hill. 4 seasons ago, Marty, a numbers guy with a flexitarian moral conscience, who had spent his career helping clients sold their ill-gotten gains away from the Brian Eyes of the IRS, and Wendy, a former political aide with a heart of permafrost, left Chicago for a resort in the Ozarks when things got too hot for them in the windy city. They took their children, Charlotte and Jonah, with them, effectively pushing their offspring's heads deeper into a world of secrets, lies, and ancillary corpses, which is not a move in any parenting manual you should read. Once in the idyllic lakeside home, and for all its depiction of the region as a hub of human venality, Ozark has probably given this bucolic land a real estate bump. The Birds spent 4 seasons trying to outfox the feds by laundering drugs money to bar and strip club, and ultimately a floating casino. Their main customer becomes Omar Navarro, head of a cartel who, like them, dreams of achieving the impossible, namely going straight, and if the Birds can't help him in realizing this, they will be doing more than wiping somebody else's blood off their faces, if you catch my drift. All this would be enough for 4 series of thrilling drama. But there is more. The Birds and the cartels suppose Ozark's locals to be bibbled yokels, that Wyatt and Ruth Langmore are mere trailer trash, and that bankers, poppy farmer, and heroin producer Darlene Snell is just a hillbilly rube 2 shells short of a loaded shotgun. But those class prejudices are unfounded. The development of the character of Ruth Langmore, full-moted, pin-sized, moral conscious scum business whiz, proves otherwise. If you enjoyed Julia Garner's performance as the Russian-born German fraudster Anna, or as the titular foil to Harvey Weinstein-like sex predator in The Assistant, stop everything you are doing and watch her as Ruth right now. Yes, she performed like perfectionly. For me, there are just a handful of episodes left. Though Netflix business model is predictable, like the Mexican cartel, unhooking you quick and keeping you in a state of lucrative dependence, I'm refusing to binge watch to the final. No doubt many gorge on the last tranche of episodes as soon as they dropped on Friday and now have closure. But that's in the new episode I've just seen, the first from the final tranche. Ruth, hard as nails and brittle as pressed flowers, is driving to Chicago to settle the hash of the Navarro nephew who offered her cousin Wyatt and Darlene for getting in the way of the cartel's business model. While in general I'm opposite to murder, never has anyone so deserved to be offed as the illegitious cartel pretended Javi Elizondo. As Ruth rolls into Illinois, she slips Nas's 1994 album Illmatic into her CD player as Nas rips his way to New York State of Mind. I realize why the episode is called Sleep is the cousin of that. I never sleep, cause sleep is the cousin of that, raps Nas, as a line borrowed from Jacobian Statham and poet Thomas Sackville by way of Nightmare on Elm Street 3. In this nocturnal episode, no one sleeps, not only for fear of Hamlet, like bad dreams, but because of the life of crime requires 24/7 vigilance. Ruth pitches up at all-night dinner and finds herself chatting to real-life hip-hop star Killer Mac. After paying her respects, she asks, now middle-aged Mike whether Nas would have taught his tough earlier years in the project worth enduring because they supplies the raw material for his beautiful record. It always feels to me like he hates it and misses it all at once, says Ruth. And he's only fucking 20. Mike replies, a young, supposedly white trash man, woman from the middle of nowhere, USA, we are to suppose feels a deep connection with a black rapper with a head full of rage. It's a perfect scene that ends as the sun rises on a fateful day in which Ruth, one of very few sympathetic characters in Ozark, gets ready to avenge her beloved cousin murder. That was pretty much everything about Ozark. See you next video. Bye. It's Breaking Bad, everybody. And reasons why this is the greatest show ever. It might be the only television show that is virtually flawless. That doesn't mean it will appeal to all, but it commits no errors in telling the story. That it in itself is incredible. It gets even better. Walter White, the main character, is everyone who feels cheated in life. Walter is constantly measuring his potential to the results. People understand that no matter how successful your life might be, there is some area where your dreams faded and life handed you the moldy cheese sandwich. Walter is consumed with getting the dream back and making it into a real reality. It is hard to see at first as it is so subtle, but Walter is an unsatisfied man leading a mediocre life when he feels he was bound for greatness. He is. We meet him when he is faced with his end of the road that turns into his reinvention as he discovers the dream is still alive and kicking. The show never condescends to its audience by giving us ex machinas or absurd miracles that defy physics. On one hand, we have an almost ridiculous storyline. Dying man becomes Matt Cooker to support his family. On the other hand, we believe it and even cheer and for a while, as we know, what is it like to get ripped off by insurance companies, too many bills, lousy pay, needing a second job, hiding certain information from our loved ones, and feeling unfulfilled if the American dream is going to screw us over. Then let's cook some meat. Since we can't get money and our needs met the legitimate way. The showrunner, Vince Gilligan, understood the frustration within every middle-aged provider. He also understood the fear of young people entering the job market who do not want to end up like Walter White or Jesse Pinkman. When we meet them in season 1, the writing and acting is superb. You just can't forget these characters or the things they do and say. The show starts off as a comedy that moves like a satire on the American dream. Then it gets serious. Many of us can't stand Walt by season 3. For me, it was too. But we can't stop watching him and trying to predict his next move. The man is fascinating. The showrunners had the courage to cast a disabled actor to play a disabled son who learns to live with his condition just fine, making us look at our own attitude on disability without moralistically pounding us on the skull. It shows us Flynn. It doesn't tell us how we need to feel about him. That felt like a slice of life to me. The story is so tightly written, yet it allows for flexibility. The character Jesse Pinkman wasn't supposed to last the first season. Vince Gilligan saw the potential between Aaron Paul and Bryan Cranston, so he rewrote the screenplay to make Jesse a main character. Gilligan's instructions for this show were brilliant, and that is one of the finest examples. It is the rare show that is able to appeal to many kinds of viewers, not just the intellectual or the fatalistic or the lovers of dark humor. It took a while in the ratings, but most people who watch this show are very impressed, even those that see television as lowbrow and common. Even though The Wire showed people that television was a medium for art, not escapism, Breaking Bad decided to remind us, as in case we forgot, nothing felt contrived. Season finals are the weakness of most good shows. However, Breaking Bad ended the show with the same class that it gives us in every episode. Everyone's arc is concluded in a way that corresponded with the character. The story is grim but allows a sliver of hope. The show wasn't going to lie to us and tell us everything was going to be fine. It also wasn't planning on turning the storyline into one big horror festival. There were no extremes. Everything just fit, and we all felt like we had watched a work of genius. Like The Wire, Breaking Bad will stand the test of time. I predict the same for Better Call Saul. Vince Gilligan's Breaking Bad is one of the most critically acclaimed television series of all time, soaring high near the peak of the IMDb charts. BRBA has a powerful cast spearheaded by Bryan Cranston and Aaron Paul. The story revolves around a high school teacher who is diagnosed with cancer on his 50th birthday, and after accompanying his DEA agent brother-in-law to a methamphetamine lab bust and seeing the amount of illegal revenue it produces, he decides that venturing into this world of drugs would produce enough money for him which will support his family after cancer takes his life. Here are 5 reasons why this is a masterpiece. First, there's a writing. Breaking Bad's writing is brutally honest and maintains a steady level of consistency throughout its 62 episodes. The story is carefully moving, right from the first episode to the last. It doesn't, oh my god, what moment to your face. Instead, it takes the time to set up every point carefully so that the viewer never loses track of why a certain event is happening. Second one, character development, be it the first transformation from high school chemistry teacher Walter White to the drug Heisenberg, or his accomplice and former student Jesse Pinkman transforming from a low-level street drug dealer to working under cartels. Breaking Bad progresses and develops its character in a terrific way. The third one, knowing when to stop. American TV shows have a tendency to stretch their story for a necessary number of seasons. But only seasons, but the shows also produce a huge number of episodes just for one single season. Breaking Bad does not make that a mistake. The fourth one, attention to details. The second and last one, all's well that ends well. Yes, a number of shows earn so much critical acclaim during initial seasons that they just tend to ride on that success. And forget about delivering a satisfying conclusion that fans seek. Not Breaking Bad. It delivers the most amazing ending. So that was pretty much everything for today. See you next video. And please don't forget to subscribe and like. See you. Bye. Every so often in Top Gun Maverick, Pete Mitchell, that's Maverick, is summoned to a face-to-face with an admiral. Pete, after all these years in the Navy, more than 35, but who's counting, has told at the rank of captain. He's one of the best fighter pilots ever to take wing. But the US military hierarchy can be a treacherous political business, and Maverick is anything but a politician. In the presence of a superior officer, he is apt to salute, smirk, and push his career into the middle of the table like a stack of poker chips. He's all in, always. The first such meeting is with Rear Admiral Chester Kane, a withered chunk of race played by Ed Harris, who has an impressive in-movie flight record of his own. Without the right stuff, there would have been no Top Gun. He seems to be telling Pete that the game is over, thanks to the new technology. Flyboys like him are all but obsolete. Based on this scene, you might think that the movie is setting out to be meditation on American air power in the age of drone warfare, but that will have to wait for the next sequel. Pete still has a job to do, a teaching job officially, but we'll get to that. The conversation with Kane is not so much a red herring as a meta commentary. Pete, as I'm sure I don't have to tell you, is the avatar of Tom Cruise. And the central question posed by this movie has less to do with the necessity of combat pilots than with the relevance of movie stars. With all this cool new technology at hand, you can binge 35 episodes of Silicon Valley Christian without leaving your couch. But we really need guys or movies like this. Top Gun Maverick, directed by Joseph Kosinski, answers in the affirmative with a confident, aggressive swagger that might look like overcompensation. Not that there is a hint of insecurity in Cruise's performance or in Maverick's. On the brink of 60, he still projects the nimble, cocky, perennially boyish charm that conquered the box office in the 1980s. Back then, in Troy Scott's Top Gun, Pete was a brash upstart striving to stand out amid the camaraderie and the competition of the super elite Top Gun program. He seduced the instructor Charlie, who's played by Kelly McGillis, locked horns with his golden boy nemesis, Iceman, and lost his best friend and radar intercept officer, Goose. Ronald Reagan was president and the Cold War was in its florid final throes, but Top Gun wasn't really a combat picture. It was at heart a sports movie decked out in battle gear, about a bunch of guys showboating, trash talking, and trying to outdo one another. Times have changed somewhat. Pete is the instructor now, called the North Island Naval Base, to train a squad of eager young flyers for an urgent, dangerous mission. The frat house atmosphere of the 90s has been toned down, and the pilots are a more diverse, less obnoxious bunch. One advantage to the long gap between chapters is that many credited Screenwriters are free to fill in or leave blank as much as they want. In the last few decades, Pete has seen plenty of combat. Bosnia and Iraq are both mentioned and pursued on and off romance with Penny Benjamin, Jennifer Connelly. Now he finds her working at a bar near the base and an old Sparks reclines. She has a teenage daughter. Maverick is not dead, by the way, and a world-weary manner that matches Pete's signature blend of cynicism and sentimentality. Other reminders of the past include Rooster, son of Goose, and Iceman himself, who has ascended to the rank of admiral and kept a protective eye on his former rival. Clymer's brief appearance has a special poignancy apart from the 2021 documentary Val. He hasn't been on screen much since, losing his voice to throat cancer, and seeing him and Cruz in a quiet scene together is as sad and stirring as something from the Epic of Gilgamesh. The first Top Gun unfolded against a backdrop of superpower conflict. There was a formidable, if mostly off screen, real world adversary, the Soviet Union, in case you forgot, and the hovering possibility of nuclear apocalypse. This time he's a real life ammo skirmish with an undefined foe, a mysterious entity in possession of super high tech aircraft who is building an unauthorized weapons facility in a mountainous region of wherever. No names are mentioned, just the enemy. The circumspection is a little weird. Who or what are we supposed to be fighting? China? In this economy? The Taliban? Netflix? Maybe? COVID? What exactly? It doesn't matter. We never see the faces of the enemy pilots once the mission is underway, which only confirms that the scene that Top Gun Maverick has nothing to say about geopolitics and everything to do with the defense of old-fashioned movie values in the face of streaming era nihilism. Is the defense successful? The action sequences are tense and exuberant, reminders that flight has been one of the great thrills of cinema almost from the beginning. The story is a mixed bag. In spite of the emotional cross currents and physical hazards that buffet poor Maverick, his career, his love life, and his duty to memory of his dead friend, to say nothing of G-forces and folk, the dramatic stakes seem curiously low. Though you may hear otherwise, Top Gun Maverick is not a great movie. It is a thin, over strenuous, and sometimes very enjoyable movie, but it is also, and perhaps more significantly, an earnest statement of the thesis that movies can and should be great. I'm old enough to remember when that went without saying, for Pete's sake. Well, that was pretty much everything. See you next video. Don't forget to subscribe and like. Bye. You've likely heard about or even watched one of Netflix's biggest movies to date, The Gray Man, an action thriller starring A-list actors Ryan Gosling and Chris Evans, and directed by Anthony and Joe Russo, the brothers who helmed some of Marvel's most popular films, including Avengers Endgame. In a new column for Variety, however, Tyler Aquilina points to some troubling trends with the film, which points to a larger issue for Netflix as the world's most popular streaming service battle numerous rivals for viewers. They are finding their biggest movies are not working out the way they hoped. Released to much hype on July 22, The Gray Man was initially a blockbuster success, spending its first week in the Netflix top 10. It so far has raked up over 245 million hours of viewing time, becoming the fourth most watched film in Netflix history. However, in its second week, the film dropped 60%, and the film faded quickly from the memory of Netflix viewers. Variety reports a romantic drama starring Disney Channel actress Sofia Carson, Purple Hearts, became the streamer's #1 film, and it did it with a modest budget and no A-list stars or explosions. Yes. Things got even worse for The Gray Man in its third week. It dropped another 46%, dropping to fourth place in the Netflix top 10 films ranking. This is likely not the return Netflix was expecting from a film with a budget of over $200 million. Damn. Two of the biggest actors on earth, famous directors, and a supporting cast featuring Ana de Armas, Billy Bob Thornton, and Alfred Woodard. Right after its premiere, Netflix announced a sequel and a spin-off for the film, plans which executives might be rethinking now, considering the film is lacking in staying power. Perhaps one of the main problems with The Gray Man, which Variety does not fully address, is the fact that it isn't a great film. Rotten Tomatoes rates at 46%, with Laruska Ivan Zadeh of Metro UK calling it a $200 million snooze fest. Robert Levine of Newsday lamented all that effort and all that money should have paid for a better screenplay. EMBD only rates it at 5.9 out of 10. Oh, that's harsh. Despite the middling reviews from critics, reviewers seem to love the film. Viewers gave it a 90% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, and some online reviewers, from some websites that rely heavily on buzz or clicks, praised the film as well. However, all those positive vibes from viewers did not translate into momentum from the film after the first week. Viewers seemed to be impressed with Chris Evans' turn as a villain and liked the elaborate action scene, but that did not lead to multiple viewing or additional buzz, with the film underperforming, especially in comparison to its two biggest films, Red Notice and Don't Look Up. It may cause Netflix film chief Scott Stuber to rethink their strategy, even though The Gray Man and its other top films benefited from all-star casts. They all suffered from step drop-offs after big opening. The films also don't generate the buzz that shows to Stranger Things and Squid Game do. It should be noted that other streaming services like Disney Plus, Hulu, and Paramount Plus all advertise aggressively on network and cable TV. To this day, we still see commercials promoting the Obi-Wan Kenobi series for Disney Plus more than 2 months after the premiere. it helps that Disney owns ABC and ESPN, allowing for this sort of aggressive advertising, but Netflix would be wise to follow in their footsteps. In brief, The Gray Man is pretty much the Bourne Identity meets Mission Impossible in a lot of ways, but it does have a fantastic cast and plenty of flashy fight scenes to hold your attention, so it's worthy of your next watch. So let's find out. Why? First, we have the dream cast. Ryan Gosling was fantastic in this movie. He brought a cool modern day James Bond vibe into this character. I loved his sarcasm, and I think he really elevated this film in a lot of ways. I'm always happy to see Anna de Armas in pretty much anything, so that was a plus as well. Chris Evans played a decent villain, although I was really distracted by his mustache. Yeah. Either way, the cast was a lot of fun to watch. Lots of action. If you're looking for flashy fight scenes and tons of explosions, you're in the right place. Netflix certainly put a lot of money into this one with all of these special effects. A lot of it was over the top, but I liked the fight scenes, which were really fun to watch. The cons now. Nothing extraordinary here. We got a fantastic cast to watch, but the story was lacking, and some of the dialogue was really awful. They should have been better off saying insert attempt at a witty comeback here. The film was clearly inspired by the Jason Bourne films, but it never quite found its own identity in my opinion. There were glimmers here and there, but in a lot of ways I think Netflix really found it with this one. There was nothing truly inspiring or unique, which was disappointing to be honest. Sure, it will fit your bill for a weekend watch, but it might become really forgettable after that. So, am I in or out? I'm in about 75%. This film was far from perfect, but it did highlight a fantastic cast with a lot of flashy action and some entertaining moments. I would manage your expectation accordingly, however. I hope you enjoyed this review and feel free to post your own thoughts and theories on The Gray Man in the comments section below. Thanks so much and happy reviewing.